what's up guys, Omogonix here and welcome back to a brand new video here on the channel. So in today's Unity tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you all how to do smooth player crouching in Unity. So I have made a few crouching tutorials in the past, but in my opinion this one is quite an improvement since the crouching is a lot smoother. And what I mean by that is, so when the player is crouching up and down, the way the player crouches is just a lot smoother. It's not really snappy like it is in my previous tutorials, so I do think that this is just quite a bit more polished, and yeah, that's why I wanted to make it a tutorial on it today. So if you guys do enjoy this video or you do learn something from it, be sure to like, comment and subscribe for more, and let's get right into it. Okay, so first off what we're going to do is we're going to actually just get to writing the script. So there's nothing really that you need to have set up in your scene other than your player, of course, so make sure you do have your player. And when it comes to components, just make sure you have a character controller attached. And in case you don't know, when you have a character controller attached to your player, you don't need a capsule collider with it. So if you do have a collider attached to your player, be sure to remove it because it's not needed since the character controller itself is already a collider anyway. And yeah, so now let's get to writing the script. So in your folder, in your project folder, just right click, go create, and then C# script, and we're going to call this crouch. And then when you're done creating your script, it should just do like a reload script assemblies thing, and then boom, and then once that's done, just double click to open your script, and here we go. So as you can see, we have all this starter stuff here. Just get rid of it for now. What we're going to be doing is we're going to start off by entering out the variables. So the first variable is going to be a public character controller variable, which is going to be for our player's character controller component. So I'm just going to call this player controller. And the reason as to why it's public is so then we can assign this variable in the Unity editor. Now the next variable is going to be a public float. And for those who don't know, a float, it's basically a number that can have a decimal. So you have integers, which are just whole numbers, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have floats, which can be whole numbers, but you know, they can have actual decimal points at the end of them too. So it could be like 1.0, 2.5, 3.1621, you know, stuff like that. And yeah, so we're going to be calling this crouch speed. And then the next variable we're going to be entering out are two other public floats. So what we can do to enter out these other variables is we can just do a comma, because if you're entering out variables which are the same type, you don't need to do a whole other thing where it's like public float and then, you know, write the whole other thing. You can just do it this way as well. It depends on how you want to have your script sorted out, so yeah. So just comma, and then what we're going to be doing is normal height, and then crouch height. So these float variables will be for the player's height when standing, so their normal height, and then the player's height when crouching, so their crouch height. Another variable we'll need too is a public vector free, and this will be called offset. And I will show you guys what this is for soon. So basically it just has to do with making sure that the player doesn't go through the ground when they're crouching up, because there's no issue when the player crouches down, but if we don't add an offset to the player when crouching up, then what will end up happening is they'll end up most likely falling through the ground, and we don't want that at all. So that's why we have the vector free offset variable. And then the last variable that we'll need is a public transform variable for the player object itself. And boom, there we go, that is all the variables entered out. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing an update void. And what an update void is it's basically a function where stuff happens every frame. And so in this update void, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going if input dot get key down key code dot left control. So basically when we press down the left control key, what will happen is the player will toggle their crouch. And that actually brings me to another variable I forgot, which is not a public variable, it's just a bool, and it's called crouching. So what a bool is, for those who don't know, is it's a variable that can either equal to true or false. So what we're going to be doing here in the update void is if the player presses down the left control key, then crouching will equal to the opposite of what crouching currently equals to. So if crouching equals to false, then crouching will equal to true when the player presses left control, and if the player's equal, and if crouching equals to true when the player presses left control, it will then equal to false. So yeah, it's just crouching equal to the opposite of what it's currently equaling to. So now what we're going to be doing is in a line below, we're going to be doing if crouching equals true. And so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be going player controller dot height, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be changing the height of the player controller. So player controller dot height equals player controller dot height minus crouch speed times time dot delta time. So basically what this does here is it makes the player controller's height go down much more smoother, so it's not just a snappy thing where the player controller's height just instantly equals to the crouch height. What will end up happening is the player controller's height just smoothly minuses itself over time. And then what will happen in the next line is if player controller dot height, so if the player controller's height is less than crouch height, or less than equal to crouch height, we could also do, what will end up happening is the player controller's height will just equal to crouch height. And the reason as to why we're adding in this line is to make sure that the player controller's height just doesn't keep on minusing itself, because obviously we do need to cap it at some point, which is the crouch height, the player's crouch height. So once the player controller's height minuses itself down to the crouch height, what will end up happening is then the player controller's height will just always equal to the crouch height, so it's not going down any further and our player just keeps on infinitely shrinking. So what we're going to do now is we're going to copy this code here, just copy this, and then we're going to paste it down below. And what we're going to do is instead of crouching equal to true, crouching will equal to false. And then the player controller's height, instead of minusing, it will plus itself, so it will smoothly plus itself over time. And then if the player controller's height is more than equal to the normal height, so not crouch height but normal height, then what will happen is the player controller's height will just equal to normal height. Now that isn't all we're going to be doing here, since there is something else that we need to actually do in this if crouching equals false section of the code as well. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy this line here, and we're just going to do it above here. And we're going to do if player controller height is less than normal height. What will end up happening is we'll go player dot game object dot set active false. So we're setting the player false, and I will show you guys why we're doing this in a bit. And then we're going to do player dot position equals player dot position plus offset times time dot delta time. And then we'll be setting the player active again. So what this is doing here is it's basically offsetting the player's position as they're crouching up. And this is why we need the offset, because when the player's crouching upright, what can end up happening is the player can end up falling through the ground. Now, when actually doing this script, something that I notice is that when the player smoothly crouches up, unlike my previous crouch tutorials where if you don't put in certain safeguards, then the player will fall through the ground. Instead, what happens with this script is the player will crouch up correctly and they won't fall through the ground, but it's just not very smooth. Like, it's very jittery, and you can tell that the player controller is almost going to fall through the ground, but it's basically trying not to. So yeah, that's why we're implementing in this safeguard here. So then the player's position is just changing as they're crouching up. So it's just slowly making the player go more up, and putting them up, so then it's not all jittery as they're crouching up. And the reason as to why we're turning the player off and on as the player is changing its position is because the player's position won't change otherwise if we're not turning it off and on. And by the way, you can't even tell that the player is being turned off and on, since it is just happening like every frame, so you can't even notice it basically, so yeah. And then that should be pretty much the script. If there's anything that I've forgotten, I will of course add it in, but I think that is it for now. So what you guys can do is you can just press Ctrl S to save your script, and then you can just go back into the Unity editor. And if it says reload script assemblies, that means you did everything right, and then boom, you're all good to go. So now what you want to do is on your player, you want to add in the crouch script. So once you have in your crouch script, you just want to apply the variables. So you want to drag in your player controller to there, your crouch speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my crouch speed to 2, and then my normal height. Make sure your player's normal height is basically what your character controller's normal height is. So if your character controller's normal height is 2, then make sure you set it to 2. And then with my crouch height, I'm going to set it to 0.2. And then with my offset, make sure you only change the Y value for this. You don't need to change the X or Z values for this. But make sure you change the Y offset value to something like, I don't know, 1.5 or 1 or something like that. And then with the player, you just want to fill in your player into the player transform variable, and then boom. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to test this out. So let's just click play and then test out how this script goes. Alrighty, so here we are in the game. As you can see, I've just got a little sign here which says hi. And this H does have a purpose, since it's going to be a test for if I can crouch underneath it or not. So let's test out this script. So as you can see, when I crouch up and down, it smoothly goes up and down. Now I notice when crouching up there is a bit of a jitter there, but that can just be easily adjusted by changing the offset value to make it a bit less jittery. But yeah, overall it is working pretty well. As you can see, the player is smoothly crouching. It's not just a snappy thing like it is in my previous tutorials. So now to show that the crouching actually works, let's actually crouch underneath this H. And boom, as you guys can see, I could crouch underneath the H. And then if I try to walk underneath it when standing, I can't. But then if I crouch again, I can then go underneath it again. And yeah. Hey guys, Omogonix from the future here. So I did encounter a bug when testing out the script after recording the video. So if you want to know what the bug was, well basically, you know the 2 lines of code here that are used to set the player off and on? Well, let me show you guys how they caused a bug. So usually whenever I'm like changing the position of an object in Unity, if it has to like teleport to somewhere, right, usually what I do is I set it off and on, since otherwise the position of it won't change. But it turns out that since this isn't like a teleporting type of position changing, you know, just having the position change without setting the player off and on actually does work just fine. However, let me show you guys what the bug is first, so then you guys can see what it is. In fact, some of you guys have probably already experienced it for yourselves and are commenting about it right now before you finish watching the video. But so what you do is you just crouch down, and then when you're moving around, right, you'll notice that when you crouch up, you can't actually move anymore, and we don't want that, obviously. Now, for some people, that might not be that big of an issue, and if you don't see that as an issue, that's totally fine. But to me, I just see this as limiting player movement, and I don't really like this. So what we're going to be doing is, all you need to do is just remove these 2 lines of code here, and then boom, you're all good to go. And yeah. And also, another thing that I might recommend as well is with your player controller, right, if it's got like a gravity value, maybe turn down the gravity volume, like the gravity value a bit, in case it's like a bit too high, because otherwise that could be causing the player to be a bit jittery when it's crouching back up again. So yeah, that's just a little extra tip there. You don't have to do that, but yeah. And so just make sure all your variables are right, and then let's test it again and make sure all the bug is removed and gone. So we'll crouch down, crouch up, and as you can see, when we're crouching up and down, we can actually just move around quite freely now. And yeah. So hopefully anyone that encountered that bug for yourselves, hopefully you've all got it fixed now, you know, just remove them 2 lines, setting the player off and on, and then you're all good to go. And then yeah, you can go back to some proper smooth crouching. So that there, guys, is how to do smooth player crouching in Unity using C#. If you did enjoy this tutorial, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And also, at this moment in time, my game Bodhi and Friends is currently 40% off on Steam and Itch.io, so if you want to buy it, be sure to go check it out. It is only going to be 40% off for a limited time. By the time you watch this tutorial, the offer is probably over, but yeah. So anyways, guys, again, if you did enjoy, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more, and check out my games on Itch.io, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.